Welcome to your daily game face. I'm Dr. Kim Lannon, and I'm here with Lou Blasi.
It was a pregnant pause.
Well, I was thinking of a word, but I didn't have one today.
Yep. Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I did, but I didn't want them to come out.
I'm in a very good mood today.
Good. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I never know.
What are you talking about? I'm usually in a decent
Well,
mood.
you're in a good mood, but sometimes you're in a funk.
Not funk, just distracted. A lot of stuff going on. Trying to stay on task.
Okay. Well, anyway, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to your daily game face. As you know, or probably you didn't know, I was a guest host this week on a really fun show. And if anyone wants to go check it out, Ron Kolek, as
Yes.
I'm going to always do the other one now because I made fun of it. But Ron, he's the show host of Ghost Chronicles, but he's like a ghost hunter.
We kind of call him Ghost Hunter. He's a paranormal scientist.
Right.
As
so
he said on the show.
But he doesn't. He's
doesn't
interesting
ghost hunt,
because
really,
he's
though.
different than like a parapsychologist or paranormal chaser. He actually
Could have stopped it different.
he has this way of, he's really looking to see what truth is out there, if there is any. He's not just like I believe in everything and it's all out there. And he's much more the skeptic. I would say he's not a skeptic, but he plays he's always searching to see, what's really going on out in the world.
He's open and he collects a lot of people to bring a lot of stuff to him, and then they just discuss the stuff that comes up.
Right. So, but he's fascinating because he's not your typical like one camp or the other, like all in or all out. He's got a good experience base. And the reason why I was on that show is because he asked me to be on the show to discuss paranormal psychology and like the psychology of what people think and how they think and why they believe in apparitions and ghosts and mediums and so on and so forth, from the psychology science side. I don't think he realized how much I was going to talk about. But nonetheless,
no, you didn't realize how little we stay on topic on that show.
Oh, well, that too.
Yeah.
Yes. The topic shifting is quite something.
Oh, yeah.
By the time we were done, we were talking about murderers and people doing all kinds of terrible things. But next week, he's coming on my show, which should be very entertaining between the three of us.
Yeah.
Because we're going to discuss, I thought it was very appropriate that it's Halloween. And Halloween time is some people's favorite holiday and some people's favorite time of year. And
it's a good holiday.
They love the whole spirit, no pun intended, spirit of that. And it's also for people that don't follow Halloween as Halloween. It's All Saints Day or All Souls Day. Do you call it All Saints Day or All Souls Day?
All Saints Day. Well, Halloween, I call it Halloween.
Right. So, so a lot of people celebrate or not celebrate. I don't know what they do, but they think of it as that. So, it's kind of like a little wrap in of all kinds of interesting things. And it's psychological in nature for a lot of people too, because there's an earthen tie-in to all kinds of different religious practices and psychological phenomenon that happen. And you've got anything from like right up here in Salem, Massachusetts with all the witches and practicing Wiccan. And
have you ever done a Halloween in Salem?
I have done Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts.
It's like Christmas at the North Pole.
It is quite something.
Yeah.
And it starts early. You want to go up there now. You should just as good a time as next week. It is quite something though. And seriously, for anyone that's in the area or coming to Massachusetts over the next 2 weeks before Halloween, visiting Salem, Massachusetts, which is the original witching ground.
Some people are very forward on this kind of stuff. It's a forward part of their thinking.
In what way?
It's day to day. It's a given. It's part of their reality. In other words, Ron does it for a living.
Right.
He goes through and does it. And I do it because I do the podcast. And if I get something interesting, I'll follow it. But it's not day to day to me.
Right.
But a lot of people, it's day to day.
It's right in there. Right. So it's their life.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's just like anything. Like my life is what I do, right?
Yeah.
And your life is what you do. So yes, it is very present. But it's probably foreign to you that it would be present. Like forward.
Okay. Yeah.
Because like we talked about, so the other day on the show, if you guys go back and watch Ron's show, Lou and I had an extensive conversation while Ron was doing whatever, who knows what he was doing.
Yeah.
But about how how to experience paranormal experiences and why some people do and some people don't, or some people are a little bit, and what the differences are of that. And so probably if I explain it today better, I'll get a better chance of explaining it than I will when Ron's here, because we'll get sidetracked.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But the experience base for people is, being more open. And we talked about this the other day, is being more open to certain things than other things. And again, generalizing this to anybody's life in general, that was really rhetorical, is, are you open to just change? Are you open to something motivating versus not? Are you open to spirituality? Are you open to a different way of thinking? It's sort of the same thing. Is the more open you are, the more suggestible you are and willing to kind of go with that train of thought, then the more likely you're going to have those experiences. But also at the same time, if you don't put yourself in an experience-based or exposure-based area where, you go to a seance, like you were saying with Ron the other day, or something like that, then you're not going to necessarily have that opportunity, because you wouldn't be around people that are open and willing to go there. So,
okay, do you want to dig in on this a little bit?
Do I want to what?
Do you want to dig in on this a
Sure.
little bit? Because you danced around the center of the topic.
Go ahead.
The center, yes, people who have a thought process that opens themselves to this type of experience, have these types of experiences.
Yes.
The question is, are they real?
Okay. Yes. So
because the example, and my girlfriend watched the show, so I
she
guess
did?
the cat's out of the bag on this one. My girlfriend and her daughter are into this stuff.
Yeah.
And I get around the house, last night there was somebody in the bedroom, and it's like, I'm just trying to get the bills paid. So I got a lot to deal with. A ghost in the house is not necessarily something I need to deal with right now. So I don't really, I don't really delve into it.
Right.
It's
so
just not where
that's not
energy,
where your presence of your mind space is, or your consciousness is.
Right.
Right. So go to that question. I think it's a good question. Is it real? Because I get asked that as well, but
based on a reality, I would have had, I don't know how open you are, whether you're open or not, you're going to have an experience, right?
Well, some would say yes and some would say no.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing is so go back to the question, is it real? So that's a hard question to answer, right? Because it's like I said the other day about talking about, the tooth fairy and Santa Claus and being able to identify something you can't necessarily see, but exists in some way, right? So it's the same thing. Is it real, or is it in your imagination, or is it something that you want so badly that you experience it? I mean, so from a clearly scientific psychology background, one would say, in my position, that people, generally speaking, their reality is their reality, what their perception is. If they see something fly by their face in the middle of the night, and they explain it, then that's their reality. That doesn't mean that I have the same reality. It means that I can totally understand and validate that. I hear that you had that, I see that you had that, but I don't actually see it.
So your answer is define your terms.
Right.
What is quote unquote real?
Right. Yeah. But it begs the question about how we do have a growing field of parapsychologists and paranormal activators like Ron and other people. I know several people who practice as mediums. I've known them for years. I have a new person in my life just recently after my friend died this summer. One of his family members actually is practicing, and she's pretty amazing at it. So it's hard when you talk to people that have credibility to say, oh, it's not real, because it flies in the face of what I know scientifically and what I would purport, but also, the reality is how do you have someone that knows something about something else that you would never have the access or the availability to talk about? So it's quite an interesting phenomenon. I think for people, it is real. To many degrees. And certainly I shared my experience with my dad's apparition being in the doorway. I think people have those experiences, and it could be because of neurological connection. It can be because of that other piece that we can link together sort of loosely scientifically. So, me going with science and fact. But at the same time, I think that there's something to be said for, little kids have incredible intuition and ability to sense things. And you will see common reports of kids reporting things like that from, little up until they're 6, 7, 8 years old. And then the socialization process comes in of like norming of like, you don't talk about that stuff. It's weird. It's going to make people think you're crazy. And something I didn't talk about the other day was that cultural piece. There's very, very heavy load of spiritual parapsychology, right? But would be labeled spiritual in, the Dominican culture, the South American culture, South African cultures. Like there's different cultures around the world that are very heavily believing in spiritual beings, good and bad. You have the chupacabra, the mythical character, down in Dominican that runs around and, sort of is scary and terrorizing of people and kids. And then you have all kinds of belief systems religiously that integrate into spirituality of like, the visitations of an angel coming to you after someone passes. So it's very interesting to see culturally over time, because in my office, I get clients occasionally over the years I've done this where they've been sent to me I've been told they're psychotic. But in fact, after getting a good history and getting a background on the religious belief and what the family is and whatever, they're not psychotic. They actually just have a core belief system that this is, and that's how they make sense of the world around them. And it's not functionally challenging them. They're not seeing things and having psychosis. Whereas I do have clients that are psychotic, and that's a totally different way of reporting. It's a different experience. Sometimes it's really close. It's hard to tell, but it's pretty clear when a person's just really intuitive in their sixth sense.
It's my theory about like near-death experiences, because we've been conditioned on what a near-death experience should be. So when people get the endorphin rush of being traumatically injured or close to death, and they get, things start to happen to them biochemically.
Yes.
What their mind is going to conjure up is the white light and seeing grandma and seeing, that's because culturally that's what we've been told happens.
Right. So
I think that's a big part of it.
There's that social norm piece there, yeah.
But here's the thing. My approach to this has always been that I think this is about reception. I mean, psychologically, we're a radio, and we're tuned to different frequencies.
Yes.
So I believe, and we know energy can't be created or destroyed. So there's energy out there, and some people interpret it a certain way. And, I told you about the woman on the show who smelled her father's pipe tobacco, or someone hears a voice, or someone sees a chupacabra, or something like that.
Right.
The energy might be out there, and some people pick it up, some people don't, which is why I'm always drawn to the more compelling experiences. You tell me you see a ghost, that's interesting. I'll listen to it. You and I both see a ghost, or you and your friend saw the same ghost. That's when I get interested.
Right.
That's the compelling piece for me, or it has that kind of experience, or there's a ghost that reoccurs in a particular site over a period of time, and several people
gets multiple reports.
Right. Or when a piece of information exchanges that is not able to be known any other way. Right. Those types of things.
Well, right, because then it's because we go into that cognitive dissonance, that conflict in our head of like what's real versus what we can't see. How do we believe that that's there? But it's that, wow, how could that person know that? But clearly they know that, and there was no other way to know that. Yeah. And so how does that come about?
But the other stuff, our mind is designed to draw conclusions and fill in information. Right. So if you put a person in, like you talked about me putting myself in a situation where I'd have these experience. Yeah. You bring me to an empty warehouse. Yes. Somewhere and want to scare me. I'm predisposed to be scared because my mind is up. I have that empty warehouse. There's threats everywhere, and anything that I get for input, whether it be a sound or a flash of light or just, the way things work, my mind's going to say, okay, threat. And they're going to build up a threat around it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so that's a great example. Would you really, if you were in a warehouse and would you really get your threat up because you are so well defended around that you're not necessarily open to the experience of it happening? Whereas I might be standing next to you and go, did you hear that? And you might say no. See, I can imagine us standing in a warehouse and me going, did you hear that? And you'd be like, no, Kim.
Well, like I said, the example I used in the show was two people walking in the woods. Yes. And one person says, oh, look at that blue jay. Look at the deer over there. I see these tracks for, a moose or whatever it is. And the other person's just swatting mosquitoes. Right. And that's the only impression he gets out of the thing. And it's about being able to tune into the to the experience.
Well, that's what I've been saying too, is that it's awareness. Is your experience and exposure base open and aware of the fact that something could happen, or that something's around you, or that there's a feeling, or that you have an interest level enough to be like, oh, that chill on the back of my neck wasn't the wind, it was something else, or you're identifying it as something else that you might explain it. I think goes back to the top of the show when I said, and you were saying that, it's really dependent on where is your focus? Like, is it your interest level? Is it something that you're really looking for? Like a lot of people just walk into most situations in that paranormal world of that there's something everywhere. Like if you talk to my friend that's a medium, she'll tell you that it's constant all the time, that they're talking to her all the time.
They have to develop techniques
and
to
that
turn
she
it
has
off.
to develop techniques to push it all aside, since she was a child, and now she's in her 30s, and so she's constantly, she said she does it fine, but she said it's always there, that it's no matter where, what, how, and so and so it's funny because people, like, I don't ever say anything to her about it, so I just know her well enough to know. But when people find out, immediately they start asking. Sure. Of course, when that happens, it charges it up. and so she says she has to fight it off, because the way she reports it is that all these spirits, when someone's activating her, are trying to be activated. So she has to fight it harder to not.
Yeah, it's a very common story through working with Ron over the years. Yeah. I know a ton of mediums, and I know a ton of people in this business, and that's always interesting. It's always an interesting part of the story where they struggle just going to the grocery store and,
Right, and having to tune everything out.
Yeah, someone's trying to get their attention in the movies, and that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So the field of parapsychology has grown exponentially in probably the past 20 years, at least in my experience watching it. I mean, I don't do paranormal work. I certainly have clients that have paranormal experiences, but the actual psychology piece of it has been of interest. I mean, there's now labs open that are considered more official than they used to be, down at University of Pennsylvania and like all over New England, because we're the capital and mecca of witching and spiritual, supernatural. And certainly they're trying to find more credibility to it. Hence the Ghostober shows. The whole month of October is like, ghost hunters on TV and paranormal activity and all these things. And aside from entertainment value, I mean, there is actually some psychologists, like with doctorate and higher level degrees, that are out there that are not just chasing after like stories. And they're trying to figure out, sort of what Ron does too. They're trying to figure out, is a person really having the experience legitimately? Not that it's not legitimate, but is it something that's really an apparition, a ghost, a spirit, or something? Or, which happens in my cases, is that if I've been called in on something like this, or if I'm consulting, what psychological pressure or trauma or acute stress is going on that is making the person perceive that something is happening? Yeah. Is there something, in many cases, not all, there's an abuse background, or there's something that's happened to the person in a sexualized nature, or trauma of physical harm that ends up becoming manifested in somehow this is occurring. There's a show that I don't know if it's still on TV or not, but it's a paranormal activity show. I don't remember the name. It was something like that. But the group in Pennsylvania, they would go around and try to debunk or prove these things, and they would often find psychological factors that were really contributing to the person's experience that was more than what was happening. And when people I go right to Munchausen's in my head, like a lot of people who have Munchausen by proxy, and there's not a lot of people, but you find them in these kind of stories, that people who are family members creating some kind of really unhealthy situation for their kid or their now adult kid, and they're still all living together, and there's a codependent trauma bond, and that the way that the person's dissociating in their anxiety is to create this environment around them where there's some kind of spirit, either they're giving them good stuff, or most of the time it's something that's attacking them and getting something going. And so around those kinds of experiences, I think, is a lot what kind of spawned more research and more activity around looking for is this stuff really real? Is this stuff like a figment of people's imaginations? And it's fascinating. I mean, I enjoy just dabbling in listening to it and trying to understand, because I love the brain, and the brain has a wonderful way of making meaning of things that it doesn't understand. The conscious, I think Ron said it, or you just said it the other day, the conscious mind is trying to figure out what the unconscious mind is doing, and then they don't really talk to each other, but then they do. And so this is where it manifests, and I find it
makes sense you would receive spirit messages of spirit communication through your mind, and that it exists in your mind, and the mind produces these physical responses and stimulus. That makes sense. So it would be real in the sense that you're getting it, but not everybody else is sharing it, because you're the lone receptor. You brought up an interesting point, though, and I know what this is going to sound like, and it's not debunking any of this. This is not a statement on...
Well, debunking is fine. I mean, it's good to explore.
I don't intend to. I'm not trying to debunk any of this, but you talked about the explosion of this type of interest.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it is substituting for religion. And you talk about the why in your life.
Yes.
Having a why.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people search for that why this way, because people don't want to arrive at the conclusion that all you do is you get up, you live your 80 years, and then that's all there is to it.
So yes, I agree that there's a piece of that there, because the
people want to know UFOs exist. We're not alone. People want to know spirit world exists, because that's someplace we're going.
Faith in something bigger. So it's a replacement of the religious belief in a way. It's a spiritual belief of the return. Like you go back to saying the return of energy that can be neither created nor destroyed. So if you're, and I was brought up Catholic, which is there's no reincarnation. You die, it's over. You go to heaven, this ethereal place, all these things. But now, which is interesting
because the Catholics,
as a Catholic, like I was, and I'm not practicing, but I have a belief system in something bigger than myself. But it's not what I was taught traditionally, because I believe of return of energy. I believe in the science of there's no creation nor destruction of, and it just returns. So
that's because you wouldn't find a use in donating to a spiritual world. You would find a use to donating to a church. Church is a man-made thing.
Exactly. So people get their spiritual cup filled up by tithing and money and doing those things.
Yep.
I don't.
Yep.
That's not my thing. And
I'm speaking of the Catholic Church. It's the only experience I have. So
Well, so most churches have that.
Yep.
So I mean, yes.
Yep.
So it's not just the Catholic Church, not to pick on them. I'm only coming that because it's my frame of reference of what I grew up with. But and I said this on the show for Ron the other day, is that there's I think this is in most religions. I can't speak to them directly, only from anecdotal evidence to clients, but that each religion has its way of dealing with it's in and of itself the only one, and therefore there's no way to believe beyond that. So to think of something spiritual in a paranormal, unnatural way, the way I was raised in Catholicism, which Ron and I had that difference the other day, is that was a no-no. It's pagan. It's unheard of. It's Satanism. It's all these other things.
It's interesting. Ron and I go to that circle a couple of times too, and it's interesting because the Catholics also have a well of souls,
right? Which
is a finite amount of souls,
right?
So how does this happen without reincarnation or recycling of life?
Well, so this is like so it's a great psychological cognitive conflict debate that I think happens a lot internally for people, because some people, the older generations are much more afraid to talk about this because that stigma and the misnomer of trying to go to hell.
Yep.
Versus, I have a group of very common teenage to 20-year-olds that are always thinking about what else is there?
Right.
Why do I get up and go to school and do hockey and lacrosse and all these things, and I come home and eat and go to bed, and like, what is there in a bigger space? So I try in my practice to open the door to thinking of various ways to enhance their current belief system, whether it's Judaism or Catholicism or Hinduism, whatever they're practicing themselves or what they've been raised as, to enhance that, as opposed to only thinking of that. Because oftentimes what happens is kids, especially like teenagers, they have this like window of time where it's like there's a suicidal window.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, why bother? No one will love me if I am gone. All those things. And part of that is that spiritual piece of what is really, is there God? Is there anything bigger? And to get teenagers and young adults to say, you know what, if you don't believe that and you're challenging it, look at all the other things that might possibly be, so that they're getting that sense of self. They're getting the sense of purpose and why, and so that it's not this all or nothing thing, because there must be something bigger. But it's hard to wrap your head around. It's kind of like this, I call it the Santa Claus concept.
Yep.
It's hard to wrap your head around something you can't see. Just because someone tells you it's there doesn't mean it's so. But then you get into the debate of, well, someone tells you you love them or I love you. Well, how do you know? You can't see it. So it's that same kind of over and over repeating process, but it's about really opening up the mind to, you can think of things a different way. You don't have to think of them only that way. But people get so caught up in the guilt and the shame of diverging from what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to know, which actually creates a mental health issue for people in my office, because that's where you get a lot of shame and guilt and being stuck and not able to move forward, because people feel like if they're betraying their family, their mothers, their fathers, their whoever, their grandma, their nana, that they would even think like that. And that translates to a lot of things. I mean, I have people who it's similar to if someone's coming out as being gay, lesbian, trans, all those, it's the same process of it's going away from what's considered the norm and acceptable. But if someone can't express how they feel, they're stuck, and then they get this fear inside that becomes anxiety and panic, and then it turns into a whole thing that goes down the chute. Now, whether we're talking about paranormal or gender identity issues or financial issues, whatever it is, it's very similar process. But coming back to that paranormal thing of young people searching for purpose, people in their 50s and 60s and 70s are searching for purpose, but it's in a different way.
It's
the
funny. The
brain changes the way it looks at it.
It's funny because I was just processing that as you were talking about it, because one of the reasons I'm in a good mood today is because in the last week or so, I'm Italian. I'm of Italian-Irish descent. And I just assume my family line in terms of the United States came with the Great Migrations. Right. The potato famine and the Italians in the 19th century, coming over. And I thought that's where my story in the United States started. But Ancestry had said that there was some colonial DNA there. So I've been searching for it for years and just finally broke the seal in the last week or so to get back to colonial America. And in fact, last night I'm going through some relatives, and I live on Plum Island, and I'm finding relatives that settled in Newbury in 1640. 20 years after the Pilgrims, and guys who had deeded lands on Plum Island. And it's like that connection to something bigger is how I'm searching for that. As opposed to ghosts in the spiritual world and something like that. My substitution for that has been Ancestry and going back to trying to connect to colonial America.
And I think, and that's a really common experience look at how big Ancestry.com is and the genealogy pages, right? Huge, because people want to connect somewhere, and that's the thing is,
so if this guy Richard Knight,
spiritual and paranormal, it's connecting. Where are you trying to connect in the world?
If this guy Richard Knight from 1640, an ancestor of mine, I'm reading about him and talking about him and hearing stories and collecting other stories about him, he's lived on from that time period. So you start to think that you grow up thinking when you're gone, no one's going to care. No one's going to talk about you. But here I am digging up this guy from, 1640 and, stories about him. So it is a connection to the spirit world in a kind of a different way.
Well, it's the past life regression way.
Yeah.
Right. So if we stick to the way it would be described in the topic of this show, it's the, regression to the past and connecting in. And are you a reincarnate of him? Is that why you found him? Now, here's where a lot of spiritual paranormal people would go is, well, you found him because now he's found himself in you now.
Yeah.
Right. And
right.
So the fantasy around the past life and finding connection in your ancestors is now connected into you. And it usually gives people a really good feeling. It's kind of like having the faith, and like a religious experience is like, oh, I have faith in the fact now because I can feel the connection. And that could be any degree of that. Like you're happy because you're like, oh, I found this cool thing. And it's really great, and finding other people out in the world that might be connected to you because of that connection.
But that being connected to something bigger, something larger, and understanding that you're an important piece of something
Right.
perpetually.
Right.
And you know it intellectually. I mean, I have my kids, and there'll be grandkids, and there'll be grandkids after them, and grandkids after them. But what are they going to care about me? They're not. But digging into it myself makes you have some hope that you're going to live on a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying about the difference between younger generation of people doing this kind of thought process versus our generation, which is we're looking for legacy, right? You're looking for we're not actively probably thinking in those terms, but that's what it is. It's, when you're young, you're going, okay, what is my purpose and what is the meaning of all this? And then as we get older, it's like, well, what am I doing to leave a mark? What am I doing to leave a remembrance? Because I don't want to be forgotten, because what is it all for? So you're shifting through that whole time and thinking of it differently perceptively.
And you're young and you have that, you're figuring it all out. And then you get a little older and you're a parent.
Right.
And your legacy is very clear to you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can put a lot of energy into that. And then kids grow up and they leave and you start wondering, all right, what now?
Right. Well, that's why people, in their 50s and 60s and 70s go and give back into the community. I mean, it's really clear on the developmental scale of the time periods of how shifts from, in your 30s and 40s, your parenting, it's very much about like connected into that middle adulthood piece of giving to your child or your children. And then once that happens and they fly the nest, then it's about how are you serving your community in some way? How are you giving back, and how are you tithing in, not necessarily monetarily, but other ways so that you have sense of purpose, so that when you're 80 or 90 or 100, right? I'm going to go a little further than you did.
Yeah.
But when you're that age, you're not in despair of your ego integrity is there. Your ego reality of I've done something I'm happy about, and I'm feeling complete or more complete, because then I'm not going through, I wish, what if, I could have, should have.
Right.
And many times you see people having the despair of, I'm X age and I'm, I know 70-year-olds that act and look like they're 110.
Sure.
And then I know 70-year-old somethings, right? Or 80-year-olds. I have multiple friends in their 80s who run marathons or play tennis or are on horseback daily. Look at William Shatner. God love that man, right? 91 years old.
Can you imagine?
And flew into space.
Yep.
And I saw him 3 years ago. He was here in Lowell. That man looks like he's 50.
There's such a wide range of outcomes in a given age.
And I think that's, probably, if you listen to him, what a great outlook he has. I think in there somewhere he was accused of murdering his wife, but there's that.
Wow.
What was that? Charles Bronson? No, somebody else. But there's this,
but think back a generation and
non-despair. That's what there's this non-despair piece of him, is that when you have that positive mental space and attitude, and you have your ego, your reality mentality in check, I think that's a big protector of resiliency for you to go forward.
We're much more aware of it. If you go back a generation and think of what our aunts and uncles were at 50, 55, 60, it's a completely different animal from what we are at 50, 55, 60.
Yeah, because it's, I was just laughing because I'm thinking, as soon as you said that, I think of Little House on the Prairie. Yeah. Right. It pops into my head, and it's like, Laura Ingalls Wilder was getting married at, I want to say she's 15, but she's not. But, it's everybody was young and everything was done by the time they're 35 and it's over.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like over, done.
And so your 55-year aunt was sitting in an apron having lemonade all day, and that's all they're doing. And 55 today is, just the same as 35.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, and I think that piece is such an important part of like the mental piece around your experience base and how it keeps you young, and how if you believe in something that gives you a sense of purpose, or it gives you a sense of belonging that isn't hurting you or anybody else, and it's not psychotic.
Right.
Well, great. Great. And if that comes from being into the paranormal, whatever, that's good. Not the rituals. That's a whole nother thing.
Well,
no, the rituals in terms of like, lighting candles and stuff like that, but I'm not about the
you can't lump all rituals together.
It's really not a good thing.
Humans need ritual. You can't lump all rituals together.
Yeah, that's why I corrected that, because the ritualistic pieces of it that are healthy into like white light, essentially, as they would call it, or the positive, it's just like anything in life. If you're dabbling in the dark side of your mind, it's not going to go well. If you're dabbling in the light side of your mind and you're constantly nurturing that piece and like searching for your connections and purpose, all of that, that's one thing. But, you know, in my field, we have a lot of dark side stuff that people dabble in. And
one of the things
I'm
I've always
not happy about that.
What I've always loved about hanging out with Ron and the group of people around him and being involved in
Yes.
this is you can take or leave the ghost stories. You can take or leave the mediumship, you know, whatever you want, be amused by it, buy into it, ignore it, whatever you want to do. But they're always very steeped in history. I
Yes.
mean, you talk about a ghost in Portsmouth and you get a story about somebody in Portsmouth in the 1800s. So,
Right.
you know, you start talking about how spooky the tunnels are in Portsmouth, and all of a sudden you're digging in, there are tunnels? Wait a second. What do you mean there are tunnels? And you start getting that history and what life was like and get a look into it. So it's connection in that way as well.
Well, and the whole spiritual paranormal for New England, for people that are listening that are not from New England in the United States, there is a plethora of American war history, American, like the, you know, Civil War, Revolutionary War, the ghostings and the apparitions and all the things that come, and then the land and certain spots of the land here in Concord and Lexington that you don't realize just by opening up a door about a story about something paranormal that has happened, you know, specific trees, how old, there's a tree that's, I don't know, 170 something years old, and they talk about what happened near that tree. Like, it's all these things that you wouldn't know about if you didn't open your door to say, hey, you know, this weird thing happened.
There's a program in Newburyport. They have a festival every year at the end of July, and during that festival they have If This House Could Talk, and people put signs out in front of their signs out in front of the house talking about the history of the place.
That's so cool.
And you're just walking along the streets, and it's one thing to have a history story and have a story in a book. It's another thing to be standing in front of the building, and the actual building, while you're reading the history of it. There's a building in downtown where the troops gathered to go after the Civil War from Newburyport. And there's a plaque there, and the building's right there. It's really easy to envision because you're standing in front of the building.
Well, so, I mean, we're sort of jumping off this, but I think it's, you know, if you've ever traveled overseas, right? I mean, because you think of Europe, I think of Europe as having such a rich history of all these ancient things and different things that happen. So if you've ever been to Rome, you get this, I get this very visceral feeling. Now, this is, my friend would call it my mediumship, right?
Yeah.
So, but I get a very visceral feeling when I'm near the Colosseum or I'm standing in the Colosseum, that it doesn't ever feel good. I don't like going to the Colosseum. I love the building, and it's really pretty and all those things. But I get a weird, I don't know, I can describe it, but it will probably freak everybody out. But it's a very visceral,
interesting,
flashy back kind of, I can pick up images that's so bizarre, whether I'm conjuring them up or not, or whatever it is. But my psychology in my head creates a visceral reaction in my body that makes me not want to be inside the Colosseum because I get such a yucky feeling.
Okay, and don't dismiss this. You like cats, right?
Love them.
You can't put, you probably know this, you can't put food for cats next to water.
Right.
Because they automatically assume that the food is dead animal that spoiled the water.
Right.
How do they know that? That's carried down through DNA. So it's entirely possible that something got carried down to you, that you see the Colosseum and, you know, there's an association there that was passed along.
And that's what paranormal psychologists would say, is that it's an intergenerational pass through from something that's happened into
It's entirely plausible. That kitten that won't eat the food next to the water knows nothing except what was passed down to him from wildcats 200 years ago, 300 years ago.
Right. Or from Egypt.
Or from Egypt. Right. Exactly.
You know, the Siamese. It's like that long, right?
So all of this is entirely plausible.
Well, and that's the thing, is that's why, you know, when people poo-poo, you know me, I'm open to hearing everything so that I can then triangulate information and say, okay, what's plausible, what's not, because I think you have to be open to everything, because some things you go, okay, there's no way. But then there's other things like this saying, like, that's absolutely a possibility. And who's going to know that that's not a possibility, because we have no way to prove it. But certainly it could make a sense, like, how do we not know that that could pass down through? Because genetically we evolve, genetically things change. You know, the evolution of the cat, you know, don't blank where you eat. There's a reason, right? Because it could kill you, it could poison you, it could, and there's a knowledge of that. You don't put that stuff down. So, you know, just like birds, they don't eat certain colored berries. They know. I mean, how
is this any different than the bear in the back of the cave?
Exactly.
It's what it is. It's the bear in the back of the cave.
Right.
And those who didn't believe there was a bear in the back of the cave didn't survive. We're the ancestors of the people who thought there was a bear in every cave.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so that brings the point up of the other part of the show that's connected to this is fear. Is people have fears that are legitimate, and then there's these irrational, illogical fears that, you know, that make no sense to a reality-based person, but for other people, they're just so scary because they have such a storyline and narrative built into them that the anxiety comes up and the panic comes up. And it can be, and fear and anxiety go together, but they're not necessarily synonymous, right? Because you can be afraid of something that's realistic.
Right.
And then you can also have these fear of unknown, and the fear of unknown and the fear of what might possibly be that you're generating in your head is the creation of the anxiety and panic. So me fearing that there's a bear in the back of the cave makes me just avoid the cave versus the storyline that comes from the bear is attacking me. Because I have two clients that will go down the whole path of the son, like one of the sons went to their school outing, and the mother calls and says, "Did the bus get there?" And then she went down this whole line of, the bus was captured. The bus was, the whole thing about, being buried under the sand and and she goes to every scenario,
right?
Versus the bus was late.
Yeah.
And I go, the bus was
I call
late.
it problem trapping.
Right.
It's like, we got enough real problems.
Right.
Let's not go looking for them. But we have this conflict with intellect. If the cat had intellect, you could tell the cat it's okay, it's canned food and the water's fine. They aren't capable of that. We're always dealing with that fear and trying to reconcile it with our intellect.
Yes.
In other words, if I go into a warehouse and get scared by a sound, I'm going to be able to intellectually say, there's nothing here. It's an empty building. That's
to my point, though, is that's what you'll do because you're good at programming yourself to say, oh, it's nothing. Versus I would be like, maybe it's a ghost. Maybe someone's in here.
No, not programming that it's nothing, but I wouldn't turn around and run at that point, right?
Right.
Oh,
I wouldn't turn around and run either, but I would go through probably an iteration of a little bit more epic proportion than you want of what that could possibly be.
Well, a good example. Last night, my girlfriend's daughter, she has a workshop in the shed. So she goes out in the shed and it was a night and she came back and she goes, I heard this animal. I was, really? And she starts describing, she heard the animal and, one of the bushes nearby was really loud. It was this and all that. And it's like, I got my coat on and I'm going out. That's kind of the difference.
Right.
She's taking it as a threat and I'm going, all right, what the hell's going on here?
Right.
Yeah.
See, now that's how I'd be. I'm like, I'm going to go see if is it, because in my head it'd be like, okay, it's a raccoon, a fisher cat, coyote, and I want to know. So I'm going.
Which would you least want to have? I'd least want to have the fisher cat.
I would least want to have the fisher cat because that will definitely attack anything at any time.
I'll take the coyote over the fisher cat every time.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yes.
God, thank God we don't have fisher
on that
cats.
page together.
Yeah.
Yeah, fisher cats. They're very cute. People are like, oh, they're so cute. I'm like, they will rip your face off. Yeah. They will hurt you.
Yeah.
They are not a happy animal.
Yeah.
They're very cute though, but that's as far as that goes.
Yeah. I like pictures of them.
You what?
I like pictures of them.
Yes, they're beautiful.
I don't like to hear them
in
around.
My backyard. I can give you a picture of the one in my backyard.
Yeah.
Yes, along with the 50 raccoons that are screaming at each other out in the back, probably because the fisher cat's attacking them.
Fisher cat's shopping for your cats. That's what he's doing.
I don't let my cats out, so they're not going to get my cats. Yeah. Nice try, though, Lou.
Yeah.
Speaking of, right, so that goes in line with what we're talking about, cats, right? The how cats are caught up in the superstitious nature of paranormal. And how they get a bad rap.
Cats?
Cats.
Oh, see, part of the legend and the lore.
Yeah, because of especially black cats. I mean, I'm very thankful, actually, and I don't know if you know this, but the shelters around here and the animal leagues, like the Southern New Hampshire Animal League and, Bill Ricker Cat Care Coalition, everything from October 1st to November 20-something, like right before Thanksgiving, they don't allow any adoptions of any black cats.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yep.
For very good reason, because there's so much caught up in the ritual that's not the good thing. And there's so many people that mostly culturally different in their thought process about how black cats have a bad mojo with them, and they have all these bad things that come with the devil. All these things are not rational, reasonable, or realistic in any way. And so finally, a lot of the animal associations and, the HSUA and HSUS and the PETA organization, they've all come up with, this is not something we should be doing. Not to say that after Thanksgiving, people aren't going to do the same thing, but the heightened time right now for paranormal activity around what the black cat represents. So if you're looking to adopt a kitten or a cat, it's not going to be a black one over the next 4 weeks.
Is it true there are no complete black cats?
There are no complete black cats?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that information because that would mean
they were persecuted to the story goes they were persecuted to the point where there are no completely black cats.
So I know the story. So my knowledge is that that's not necessarily true. I mean, genetically, maybe it could be like a little bit off because you certainly see leucism, and you see, right? So
leucism?
Cat. So a black cat that comes from black cat that becomes like partially white or has little bits of white in it, or spotted, and they become genetically altered. So you have these pieces, certainly like white tigers are not actually pure. There are no real white tigers. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
So white tigers have only become white tigers out of interbreeding, and they are super flawed, and they actually have a lot of damage internally, and they don't have a survival rate that's very high because people think that they exist in the wild naturally.
So they don't.
And they don't. Yeah. They're created and crossed. I mean, certainly there are tigers and lions that have existed that come out much lighter and so on. Sure. But man-made, that's why white tigers are usually cross-eyed. They usually have poor sense of their awareness. There's gastrointestinal issues. There's usually all kinds of heart disease and all kinds of, because they're created. Yeah. But the white gene to produce that beautiful color, is the leucistic gene. So it's to get them to be the pretty color. And that's what happens with a lot of the different, they've done that to servals. You can see certainly some anomalies on the board out in the wild, but by and large, that is not normal nor natural.
Wow. So there's no albinos.
Is what?
There are no albino.
Right. So yes and no. Yes, they're created, but then naturally they can happen, but it's a fluke, usually, like a really big fluke. It's not like they're out there. It's not like the regular Bengal tiger out there doing its thing.
Just ruined a Nick Cage movie for me.
So the black cat fear, if you going back to the cultural pieces, right? I'm just thinking, I have a couple clients because in my office, because what I do for a living outside of just doing this, I have multiple different areas. And so in my main office in Bedford, I have my sports wall, and then I have my big cat rescue wall of all my cats and my little babies of big cat. And people who are not of particular culture, of just kind of your mainstream, don't ever usually say anything, but of certain cultures that I have there's always a comment of why do you like cats? Cats are not nice. Cats are bad.
Oh, really?
I get comments all the time.
Cats
so
in
I
general.
often have a very interesting therapeutic conversation because of what it means to them and how it impacts their life. And it's actually, people think, why is that important? Or why is it? Because actually people go out of their way to not be around them, or that they're bad luck. Or I have one client that doesn't like to sit on one side of my office because I have a jaguar picture, and she's afraid of jaguars because of where she grew up. And so, and
so the picture, kind of she moves because of the picture of a jaguar?
Yep. The picture of the jaguar triggers something in her. And I mean, it's kind of like when somebody comes in and they have PTSD. My office is set up that you are PTSD friendly in my office because you're never not seeing an opening to get out. Right. So you're not trapped. You don't have your back to a door. You don't have your back to a window. You're completely free. So I'm very careful of how I set up my office for a million different reasons that could come up psychologically. But the jaguar one was new to me. And I'm I'm not moving my picture.
But that's a tell, right?
Yes.
Because that will indicate how you approach other situations in your life. And again, deciding what's reasonable and what's real. And what needs to be paid attention to.
Well, the jaguar is the bear in the back of the cave for her.
Yeah.
Legitimately, from where she's from.
Yes, I could understand it if a jaguar was sitting there, but a picture of a jaguar,
Right.
I'm not ticked off by a bear, a picture of a bear.
But so here's the thing is that it's the narrative in the mind and the psyche that gets built around the even the picture. It's kind of like if someone's attacked somebody, a man has attacked a woman, that picture, as soon as they see it, is going to generate that similar narrative of he's dangerous, he's going to hurt me, he's hurt me before.
Right.
And the person's not there in the room, right? It's the same thing for the jaguar picture. It's that what it does to the polyvagal nerve, right? Your emotional nerve that runs, neck to gut to brain. It's it's dysregulating your system emotionally. That's sending the signals to the amygdala, the fight or flight. Even though it's not real, it's still fight or flighting you, because we're genetically, evolutionarily running from the back of the bear in the back of the cave. So it's constantly going. People don't realize this, but this is why I love what I do, because I'm constantly, it's like being in the emergency room. I always love an emergency because I like to figure it out, because there's always something going on for the visceral reaction of, just a basic picture in a room, what it involves.
And just to tie it all together, because that's what I'm good at.
Yes.
The bear in the back of the cave for most people is something in their upbringing, isn't it?
Yes.
It's something about their parental relationships.
It's something about the parental relationship, or what the parental relationship represented.
Yes.
To them. So symbolically, right? So
this is a matter of conditioning. You get to a point where you start reacting to things because of that relationship, as opposed to the actual thing that you're reacting to.
So the authority that parents have over their children, good, bad, or indifferent, in setting the stage and imprinting the modeling of the fear, is really what's there. I mean, it took me the better part of 11 years to get a client that is now broken of this pattern, but she often has to question that her parents taught her that if you go into Boston and you go by yourself, essentially, or with anybody other than them, you could get attacked because people jump out of bushes.
Yes.
That was what they were.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yep.
So, but these basic things. And then she wouldn't go even out like she'd go into her car, go to the store, come back, even in little downtown blah blah town that she lives in, because in her mind, that anywhere there's bushes, which they're everywhere, someone can jump out and take her or hurt her or steal her or kill her.
Yeah. And
there was, I'll just use the town that my office in, Bedford. The crime rate in Bedford, Massachusetts is nil.
Yeah, right.
Right? It's Bedford. It's like Bedford Falls, and It's a Wonderful Life. It's a little casual, like, whatever. But that's, kind of that image is like, who's jumping out at you from here? I mean, certainly it could happen, but it's unlikely, But it's that if you don't have the frame of reference, the exposure base, the experience, kind of going back to the beginning of the show of okay, that's a possibility, or there's a possibility, and that's a possibility that might not happen. Well, then if you only know what you know, that's all you know.
It's interesting because that comes back to the battle of intellect as well, because you would assume that people would, you're told at 5 or 6 years old that someone's going to jump out of the bushes and grab you, or a 13 or 14-year-old. Mm-hmm. As you mature, you start to see through that a little bit, and your intellect takes over. But you just talked about the authority of the parents, and sometimes the authority of the parent is absolute.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, because they know everything.
Yeah.
Right. Parents, until, kids get into their teenage years, don't question typically. And then when they do start the natural pattern of questioning, if the parent is authoritative,
it's
good.
Squashed.
No, if it's authoritative, it's good. But if a parent is authoritarian and military style, the questioning is no go. And so the child has to try to figure out as a teenager, like, well, but that's not what my teachers say. And that's not what,
no, you can't go with your friends. You'll get raped.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a cognitive conflict. All people who are in the dark have sex, right? Yeah. These things that go through their head, it's not true, but that's what they've been raised with. And anything divergent from that is, that's where you breed all the codependency and unhealthy relational patterns that keep people stuck and close, which I see all of them, which is, I know. So anyway, I'm looking at the time, and I'm going to wrap up here in a couple minutes, but so I set the stage for this for next week, because I'm never sure what Ron's going to talk about.
Yeah,
I'm going to try to keep him
Good luck,
focused, but
yeah.
I love the banter. So next week,
Good luck hurting him.
What?
Good luck hurting him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he's so much fun. I love Ron.
Yeah, he is fun.
So Ron is so much fun, and you guys will have an entertaining time. And I'll make sure I'm going to get him to hopefully tell some stories, because we don't ever get there on his show. But I want him to tell some stories because people are interested, and I'm going to hopefully be able to psychologically dissect it. He doesn't know this yet, but
oh god,
but it will be fun. If nothing else, for all
yeah.
my listeners, it will be a fun Halloween time of God knows what. But if you want to go see the show that I just did with him, go to Ghost Chronicles on
Ghost Chronicles Morning Edition. He has several shows. So.
Yes, Ghost Chronicles Morning Edition. That was from Monday the 18th at what time did we do that? 11 o'clock.
11
but
o'clock,
I think it just comes up, right? It just pops up on your Facebook.
It's the most recent show on the page.
Yes, and it's super fun. And if you want to look him up, you can find it. It's Kolek, Ron Kolek, and he will be on next week. And then after that, we will be heading into the holidays and talking about how to deal with your mother's, uncle's, friend's, best friend's wife who's coming for Thanksgiving that no one likes.
Great. There's a horror story for you.
All right. So everyone have a fantastic week, and go out and have your best day.